This is the narrative they always told us.
Okay.
Like, teachers are needed everywhere. You know, I'm a black man in education and I'm teaching math.
Me too. Yes.
I'm like, there's a teacher shortage. There's a nationwide teacher shortage. I go to the one city and state where there is no teacher shortage. Daryl, I get there and they tell me there is a waiting list to get on to become a teacher, to get in your classroom. Kids know when you care. And they know when you believe in them that this work that you're giving them, or this expectation, or this high standard that you're holding them to, they feel it from you and they'll push back on you, but they know when other people don't have the same standard, right? They know when other people don't have the same expectation because they let them do whatever. And they know internally, I'm not learning nothing.
Yeah. So what is your advice for a new teacher stepping into this to understand how to use data to inform instruction?
So my advice is
New teachers big impact. We have new teachers have a big impact on student learning. Without that, they're disappointed.
We're changing.
It's a very hard Mr. Jones on
Who is the CEO, but he's also a brother. Just like I feel like when we met, I realized we're like the same person. Because a former math teacher, middle school math, right? And just somebody who is really an advocate for students and student achievement data. So appreciate you sitting down with me here today.
Yes, sir. Appreciate the invitation.
Yes, sir. You know, it's crazy because I didn't even know, I think I told you this last time we met, I didn't even know that you were in Charlotte.
Yeah.
So we're both in Charlotte. You taught at the middle school that my brother went to.
Okay.
And I was already following your page, following some of your work that you were doing. And I saw you posted a picture at the Panthers game.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so he's kind of close. So I just slid in the DMs, hit you up, and I was like, yo, you know, how far are you from Charlotte? You're like, no, I'm in Charlotte.
Right. I kind of close. I am here. Yeah.
So I just think that's cool. Are you always in Charlotte? Like you were born, raised?
Nah, born and raised in a little small town, Belhaven, North Carolina. It's like 4 hours going east. I give people a place, Greenville, North Carolina. It's an hour from Greenville, ECU, that area.
Gotcha.
But it's the sticks. We had 2,000 people. Everybody know everybody. Okay. You're related to somebody, probably half of the black people in the community you're related to. And so I grew up country, small, southern boy, just outside. You had to go outside and play. Like one of those things, street lights come on, get in this house, you know, that whole ordeal.
Gotcha. So we're not twins, because that's the opposite. I'm not at all. So I grew up in Staten Island, New York.
Okay.
And I came down to Charlotte in 2006 when I was 14.
Got you.
So yeah. But when you started teaching, you were teaching in Charlotte?
So I actually left school. I went NC State, Wolfpack, Final Four, both ladies. And just gonna throw this out whenever this airs. Hopefully we get the championship.
I was about to say, that might not age well.
I don't know, but I'm gonna shout us out right now. But Wolfpack, I graduated from NC State and I moved to Pittsburgh for 9 years. And so I started my teaching career in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, taught there for 8 years.
God, is that rough? I know Philly is kind of rough from what I know. I see Abbott Elementary, but Pittsburgh, is it rough?
So the area that I started in, it was what we called the hood at that time. And so I started in Pittsburgh Public Schools school district. And I started because, one of the things about different from North Carolina. So this is the narrative they always told us. Like, teachers are needed everywhere. You know, I'm a black man in education and I'm teaching math.
Me too. Yes.
I'm like, there's a teacher shortage. There's a nationwide teacher shortage. I go to the one city and state where there is no teacher shortage. Daryl, I get there and they tell me there is a waiting list to get on to become a teacher, to get in your classroom.
In math?
In any area. In any area. And so I literally got in by subbing. So the way you signed up, and people from Pittsburgh would know, like the way you get into the school system, you become a sub and you become a full-time sub. And if a position opens up, you're like the first person that's going to get that position. Usually you're lined up to be like, well, you've been full-time subbing here. So, and this is with a license, with a degree, whether you have your master's, it don't matter.
So you came out of undergrad with an education degree?
Yes. Yes.
Find
could not find a job in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
That's crazy. So what brought you to Pittsburgh from NC State?
So that was, my godfather at the time had a church. And so I was heavily involved in ministry, even though I was in school. And so it felt like a great transfer. I was graduating. Now you know where we're going. It's funny when you I haven't said this in a while, but, literally I was about to go to Greensboro because at the time, Greensboro was recruiting black males in education, or I think they were just recruiting math teachers because there was a math teacher shortage, and they were giving like a $10,000 signing bonus.
Yeah. And you were like, I'm going to Pittsburgh?
I'm going to where? What am I doing? Like, what? And so I ended up not going Greensboro and ended up going to Pittsburgh because I felt like that's what God wanted me to be and all that. And so I moved there and found out that this nationwide teacher shortage was not happening there.
What year was this?
This was 2007.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're kind of old.
Yeah.
So,
don't do that.
I'm just saying.
Kind of old. I just turned 40. Man, don't play with me like that.
Nah, I like to do that. No, because I was just thinking, 07, I was a sophomore.
Okay.
I left. Anyway. Yeah. So I started teaching in 2014, but when I was coming out of high school, they were doing, I think it was Call Me Mister in South Carolina.
Yeah.
Where they were looking for more black male educators, maybe specifically STEM or math, but definitely black male educators. And similar thing, they were giving stipends or signing bonuses.
Yep.
And I elected not to go as well.
So there's our twin connection again, right? We decided to do something else and then take the money at the time when, the money they made it everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking back, I guess it was, I don't know. This college I ended up going to, Oakwood University, I ended up finding my wife. So I feel like it was all a part of it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking back, if I would advise my students or my son to be like, yo, take the money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In this profession, just go ahead and get that start. Just
right. Just get in there.
I would have definitely told someone like $10,000, like signing bonus.
That's what I'm saying. Take it.
It makes sense. Yeah.
So, but I'm still thrown by the fact that you had a degree, went to Pittsburgh, and were subbing. What were you making as a sub? You remember?
It wasn't too far from the starting salary of a first-year teacher. Okay. So, and then if you became
crazy.
Yeah, right. And if you became a full-time sub, I think you still got benefits too. So, if you were just part-time, no benefits, no nothing. But it wasn't too far below that. But the only thing about it is that now, literally, you could be subbing in a district for 5 to 6 years. Every year you start back over.
What do you mean start over?
It's your salary starts back at the base. You know how you climb the ladder? There's no ladder for subbing. And so you have a set salary for a full-time sub, but that salary stays there the entire time. And so like you start off, I knew someone in the district that I ended up going to that was subbing for 6 years, full time, waiting for a position to open up.
How do they even evaluate that, whether or not you should move from sub to teacher?
So honestly, it became like this tenure thing, like who's been at the top of the list subbing the longest, like if it was in your field or your content level, or if you're, wherever you pass the practice, because in Pittsburgh or Pennsylvania, you can take the practice, how many practices you want to, and you can qualify to teach that based upon if you passed in that area. You didn't necessarily have to go to school to teach that content. And so a lot of people were just like, I'm just going to take as many practices as I can. So when a position opens up, like they can go fill in that position, right? And get in the system to start teaching.
That's crazy. So not even, I like math, I like science, I'm good at ELA. It's just, I'm gonna get all my certifications. So whenever a job opens, I guess like that's wild.
And that was the game you had to play there, because like education and healthcare were the big like North Stars in that area. And there were and people would have to leave. I mean, literally, like you're going to either wait around for a job. And that's why nepotism was such a big thing there. They talked about it. Yeah. They thought so much, who you know, how you know. And, I was blessed that a district was literally how I got. So go back to my first teaching job. So I was literally just, don't ever wish this on anybody. I came in mid-year. And so I started observing this one teacher who was going to retire. And I ain't gonna say his name, but I'll just call him Mr. P. Mr. P was retired. All right. And I stepped into the classroom and I pretty much had a desk at the back of the room. And when I tell you, Daryl, these kids were crazy. Like, it wasn't the kid's fault, but Mr. P did not care anymore. So he let them do whatever they wanted to do. They were wrestling. They was fussing. It was just
in class?
In the classroom.
What grade level?
This was 8th grade.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And I'm sitting in the back of the room taking my little notes. I don't know why I'm doing Do I really need, there is no one else hiring. You have to take this job. Like, this was my intro into education. And so Mr. P was just like, I'm out. Like, I'm retiring in December and I don't care anymore. And I'm sitting back there like, do I really want to teach? Is this what I really want to do? Like, how's this going to happen?
It was math though?
It was math.
That's wild. So a lot of people have a rough first year.
Yeah.
A rough first couple of years. Especially if you come in mid-year. But coming in mid-year as a sub to a rough class where a teacher already gave up, so he's already not paying it. That's probably the roughest start I heard in a while.
Listen, I literally forgot about how I started. I actually had a conversation with someone about 3 weeks ago because the guy that used to, I called him my mentor at the school. He literally, I moved to Pittsburgh, I had no car, I had no nothing. You know, I'm coming from the South and and catching the bus in the winter and with some slacks on, and that wind used to tear my legs up. So I remember one day it was like, I'm gonna have to buy me some long johns because there ain't nowhere in the world I'm gonna stand out here in this cold. And so I remember getting to the school, and I remember the first time I wore these long johns. Like, I got to the school, I was burning up. I had to go to the bathroom. I was like, I gotta take all this stuff off. This is crazy. But anyway, we can go back to Mr. Gamble. So Mr. Gamble used to pick me up every morning. Became like my mentor and everything at the school. And he was just like, I'm gonna take care of you and make sure you're good and everything like that. And I literally was at a photo shoot with my mentor, and the lady who was a photographer, her name is Mecca, is his daughter. And I made that circle connection. Like, he had passed in 2021. I didn't know he had passed away and everything like that. Yeah. But just, I mean, seeing the pieces come together, like, what are the odds that I'm in Atlanta?
A whole nother city,
Right, in Atlanta. And the lady who's doing the photo shoot is the daughter of the guy that was my mentor when I first started in Pittsburgh. And so it just became like this full circle. I was just like, yeah, I forgot all about what I went through that first year, but it was crazy.
We do that on purpose.
Yeah.
Like, gotta get out of there. Like, you describing that classroom, I started teaching 7th grade math first.
Okay.
That is what my classroom was like, but I was trying.
Right.
You said Mr. P had given up.
Gone.
I was doing the best I could.
He was
wrestling in the back of the classroom. So that, we try to put that aside because it was so painful just to like think about.
People don't believe like this whole wrestling story. Like the kids were, I mean, I know this is being recorded, but they were literally trying to wrestle me. Like, I was young. I was 21. I was like, y'all, I'm not y'all big brother. Like, I'm your teacher. I'm cool with y'all. I like y'all. But what I learned that first year, Daryl, is that I was scared because I cared enough to not allow that to continue. So the kids were used to just doing whatever and saying whatever. And here I am in the back thinking like, James, they got to learn math. And you're going to have to teach them math. And you're going to have to come in and disrupt this cycle of like, we just here. And the rough thing about this, Daryl, is that, that we had block periods. So we were with them. Well, they were with me. We were with them. That sounds so weird. But they were with me for an hour and a half.
I got you.
And this is a rough little area, so we definitely had teachers to call out. So if a teacher called out, you're with this same group of kids for 3 hours. Because there was no coverage.
Because you had to keep the same.
You had to keep the same kids. There was no coverage. There were lack of substitutes, coming.
How?
Exactly, right? Lack of substitutes for that school. So there were some days I would have this class for 3 hours straight.
And it's funny, I was just about to say that's the importance of having sub-plans in place and things like that. But no sub-plans are covering 3 hours. So it doesn't even matter at this point.
So
what are you doing in those 3 hours?
Wrestling. But no, literally trying to close a gap that was left by Mr. P. I almost said his name a lot, but full name, like, and trying to schedule like math time and break or games, like how do I keep them engaged, or just being like, okay, we're done with math. I'm putting on this. We're gonna start the end of the class, the end of the 2 hours. We're gonna start this movie. And we're going to finish it the next time. I got to keep y'all I'm just trying to survive.
Yeah, it's survival at that point.
Yes.
Like literally.
Yes. Whew. And the kids mad at me because I'm like, we're about to do some work. What? Open the book? They haven't opened the book in a while. Like, there's been no expectation. Y'all got homework. And so the thing about it when I was reflecting on the story, when I was telling my friend, I forgot that my passion for education, my passion for Black people or Black males in education as it relates to mathematics has always been there. And when I was just talking to you, just making the decision to be like, I care enough to disrupt this. And that takes a lot of courage, knowing that there will be pushback, from like, I'm a child. I just want to play.
But I was like, even from the kids, like why? Because for them and their brain, I talk to students about this all the time. Them and their brain, the now is what matters. Yeah. So I want to have fun now. Right. Don't tell me I need this later on in life. Don't tell me this is helpful for me. But right now, I feel like wrestling. Yeah. Like I'm a wrestler. Yes. So you said it takes courage, but obviously it takes other things. So what else does it take to come in with a mindset that says, I care about students way too much to allow this to continue, and I need to do something about it? What else does it take besides courage to then act on that feeling? You know what I'm saying? Because it's great to have a feeling. Like I said, my first year, I felt I was called to this. God put me here and decided I'm trying to make a difference, and I was not. So what else does it take to actually make that turnaround?
Along with that courage, you have to plan. Like I remember I came across one of my old, when you first go in student teaching, you write down everything, all the stuff that you probably will not ever do in the classroom, like word for word, like what am I going to say here and everything. But I literally had to plan because my thing was, it's like, I can say we're going to learn math today, but what are we going to learn? How am I going to get them to engage? And so the planning piece became such a instrumental part of my daily reflecting on, okay, so what went well, what didn't go well, what did they get, what did they not get?
So daily you're doing this?
Daily. There's just no way, because you realize that they have not been learning what they need to be learning. And so, there are standards in place. There are expectations. There is this state test, at the end. And let me say this, like, I have been, what I forgot to say when I brought up Mr. Gamble, who really changed the game for me and just became a mentor for me. But I realized I have been growing kids ever since I stepped into the classroom. That year and that half a month, we met AYP, which was our annual yearly progress. Like, really? In that half a month, like, and I look back, sometimes I forget that stuff because it was so long ago and it was such a, like you said, traumatic experience. Just trying to get it out of my mind. But literally, they were trying to, now I left the school not because of the kids. I left the school because of administration, but it's another story, because they just threw me in the classroom and I was like, y'all, I could have killed somebody and y'all would have not known. They never checked in on me. They never asked me how things were going. They were just like, he's a Black man, he got it, and he cared.
You know how often that happens. And it's crazy because that was 2007. Like, this is 2024.
Yes.
And I'm still seeing it.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
Nah. It's real, but that's one thing that I look back on it. Like, how did I grow kids? It was always going back, okay, reflecting on my why. Why am I here? I want to be a teacher. And realizing that the decision I'm making to say we're working today, I've learned, I didn't know it then, but I've learned over the course of being in the classroom. I spent 15 and a half years in the classroom before I went full time into my business. But kids know when you care. And they know when you believe in them that this work that you're giving them, or this expectation, or this high standard that you're holding them to, they feel it from you and they'll push back on you, but they know when other people don't have the same standard, right? They know when other people don't have the same expectation because they let them do whatever. And they know internally, I'm not learning nothing. Like, I'm not learning anything.
And there is that internal desire for greatness.
Yes.
Like, there really is. And that's one of my biggest messages to first year teachers.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things I say is there's freedom in structure. And people think that, or a lot of new teachers think that if I give them freedom, give them flexibility, and like kind of lay off them a little bit, that's what's going to allow them to build relationships with me, and now I could, grow them. But no, like they respond to the structure. They respond to the expectations that are set, that are high, and they realize, oh, you care about me enough to hold me to high expectations. Exactly. And that's what causes them to respond. It's kind of weird because even if I think about it from an adult standpoint, sometimes I do just want to be left alone. But that's not what's best for me. And I recognize that when somebody is holding me accountable and somebody's pressuring me, that I respond better. And I actually appreciate that. So I feel like that finding that balance of holding high expectations with students, especially as a new teacher, is super important.
Yeah. And one of the things that you said, and I think I learned this in some PD or something, but somebody pointed out like the whole structure piece. Structure brings safety. And safety is a psychological need that we all have as humans.
True.
Like when you walk into an environment where there is structure, there is order, you feel safe. You want to relax in that because it's not something chaotic that's going to happen and somebody's doing something over here. Like, I don't know what's happening. And so like, even with new teachers, like letting them know, like that's a safety mechanism that like the reason why it's, you can be creative in all that and all the things that you tell teachers is that there's safety with it. Like a child wants to know, like, what are we doing today? Like that need, and then knowing that whatever we're doing, I'm safe in this environment. If there's chaos all around, like I don't know what's like. I'm looking here, and it's a human need, right?
Absolutely, and it's like when you put the parameters in place, they don't mind there being parameters as long as they have their freedom within it. Like the best way I can describe it, I was thinking about this. I won't get myself in trouble, but whatever. My daughter, last Mother's Day, my daughter, she was like, can we get some balloons for Mom? So I had already gotten her a little something. Right? I already got that. So I said, let's go to the store. Let's get her some balloons. We went to Harris Teeter, local grocery store. And we were in the aisles, and she said, that's a nice balloon, Dad. So I said, go ahead, go get it. So she went, she got it. Big balloon. I never seen a balloon this big. It was like $22. I was like, ooh. Like, I $22.
I love her that much.
22? Nah. So I was like, I turned and I saw there was another aisle and all the balloons in that aisle were small. I was like, hey. So I said, Niall, my daughter, I was like, why don't we pick a balloon from that aisle? Knowing that if she stays in this aisle, she's going to pick one of the small balloons. So she went down the aisle, she looked, there was pink ones, there was red ones, there was blue ones. She looked all the different balloons and she picked her favorite one in that aisle and brought it to me. It was $5. I was like, I got this. And she was super excited. What I'm saying is when she had the freedom to look around the whole store. The whole store is like, she's going over here. I didn't want to spend $22 on a balloon. So like, she's going to end up doing something that I don't necessarily want. Like, but when I give her the parameters, just stay in this aisle. Anything you want in this aisle, you're good. And then it then ended up, she was still able to have her freedom, still able to have her flexibility.
Still have choice, autonomy.
Choosing what she wants. But now it's within the confines of the expectations that are set. Same thing in the classroom. Right? You set the expectations that are strong, that are aligned with your vision, like you said, aligned with your why, and then they have the freedom within that to operate how they should. What if I told you that the principles that are being taught in this video could be taught to your school community live and in person? Well, the answer is yes. I'm Daryl Williams Jr., and you know that I'm on a mission to help 1 million students be able to live the life that they choose, not the life they're forced to settle for. And I do that by empowering new teachers to have a big impact on student achievement data without burning out, without feeling unsupported, and without changing who they are. So if there's a message that I can empower your students, your staff, your school community with, I would love to pop up in person and make that happen and provide massive value for your school community. Check the link in the description below to fill out a booking form, and somebody from the team will get back to you about how we can work together.
For me, a lot of stuff still goes back to planning. Like when you're thinking, and I know it can be a lot in the beginning, because you want to teach your content, but you're planning like, where does this need to fit? Like where, if I'm there for an hour and a half, where is the break for the kids? Right. And where's the transitioning happening, and what's happening in the transitioning? Am I giving space for kids to get off task, in that moment? And so like you're thinking about the parameters of the classroom. If it is a collaborative, activity, like what have I planned? Are my instructions clear? Because one of them instructions are not clear. You're going to go back and you're going to release kids to do something, and you're going to walk around the room and you realize like, they ain't doing nothing that I said to do, but
Absolutely.
I thought I was clear in my instructions. And so like going through those things is super important. And I'm the type of person, and I hope, first year teachers, this is just the attitude that we take on. Like, I never want to stand in front of kids unprepared. Like, I get anxiety.
Yeah. Can't.
But so many people, I'm just like,
they just winging it.
how are you doing? How are you doing this? Yeah. Like, how are you just making it up? Like, did you not know that you need that Word document that you like clicking on every website that's needed, bringing up every resource that I'm projecting, like having all that stuff ready, because sooner or later I'm talking like, oh, let me go get this up. And now somebody done throws through something there,
exactly. Like, in that transition period of time. And then even when things don't go according to plan, being able to pull and have those resources.
Yes.
But also just like maximizing instructional time.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that's a phrase people don't like. There's a lot of trigger phrases in education. Maximizing instructional time might be one of them. But honestly, to your point, if I already have this pre-planned and set to where I can just turn and click on a document and it's up on the screen versus, all right, y'all, hold tight. Let me go ahead and pull this up. Yep. And even if it takes 3 minutes and 37 seconds, that's 3 minutes and 37 seconds wasted. But to your point, classroom management wise, okay, I'm going to go pluck the person behind me in the head.
Right. Exactly. It's crazy, especially I've been in middle school, like those, it's just crazy, especially with our boys. I love my boys. In those moments where it's just like they're going to find a way to touch somebody, hit somebody, go past it, throw something in the trash, get something in the trash, hit somebody on the head on their way there. Yep. It's just in their nature to be goofy and to play and to bring, and that is not bad. It's not like I'm just going to say, I don't fault them for that. Right. I'm not faulting for that, but you've got to anticipate in those moments, like what space am I allowing, and thinking about, okay, so like you say, maximize. I was observing a classroom recently, Daryl, and I'm like, this teacher is blessed because these kids just sat there. But it took about 15 minutes for the teacher to go through the attendance, to go through, like, the kids are doing a warm-up. She was bringing up her stuff. She was correcting it, going back and forth. This person needed to go to the bathroom and I'm like, there hasn't been no instruction.
15 minutes.
15 minutes, Daryl, of no instruction. Yeah. Now, if this was my Mr. P class,
that was over. Somebody's out the window.
It's done. It's a wrap, like maximizing instruction is super important because you are there. Yes, we become all things for our kids, but at the end of the day, they are there to learn, right?
Absolutely. And I think I want to get to your transition now, but something you said just triggered in me. Like, people may be wondering, because you're old, so you're teaching back in 07. If you started back in 07.
I'm going to let you have it, though.
I started in 14. And sometimes people say things like, when you were a first year teacher or when you were a new teacher, things were different. And this may be a hot take. I'm not sure. This is something I've been thinking about recently. I think that having a Title I background, and not just Title I, but having like a high behavior or like a heavy behavior population, back in 2007 or back in 2014, I think those behaviors are the behaviors that we're seeing from the regular students now, or the average students now post-pandemic. Because a lot of people are saying like post-pandemic students are different. They have apathy, they're not paying attention, they don't care, But that's in the average schools. Those are the behaviors that we were seeing in Title I schools 10, 15, 20 years ago still. So the same things that were working for us back then, like you're saying, if I stop paying attention for 3 minutes or 15 minutes, they're going to act off the wall. Yeah. I think the teachers that currently are seeing those are not used to seeing that. Because like before the pandemic, to your point, like you're saying, I could just stop for 15 minutes, take attendance, and my kids would just sit there. Yeah. I've never worked in a school like that. But apparently there's schools like that exist. Yeah. But what's happening now post-pandemic is we're seeing more schools like and students with behaviors like we were seeing in Title I, which is why I'm saying the principles that we've been talking about, mastery for all, pursuit of excellence, the principles that we've been teaching are proven principles that are going to work regardless. Regardless. Yeah. So I think that's huge. But I want to hear more about your transition, because I know you didn't stay as a terrible teacher. Yeah. As I like to say. You transitioned. Tell me what changed the game for you?
I didn't. What changed the game for me? So honestly, what I had to do, I had to get in a cultivating environment. And I had greatness. I was in the pursuit of excellence, right? It was always in me. Like, how do you grow? How do kids meet annual yearly progress under that half a year, right? And I can unequivocally say that it wasn't because of Mr. P, right? Because I said I saw what they were learning, right?
Yeah.
And so how do those kids grow? So there was always something inside of me that just needed a right environment to grow in. And so literally I left that school, not because of the kids. It was really because of administration. And I went to a school that, it felt like a family. And though there were some of the same similar demographics, some of the same similar problems, some of the same issues, it was that this school's climate and environment, it just allowed us as teachers. There's something about the synergy that happens among educators. It allows us to feel like that we had each other to lean on. Like, we were grouped in teams. I was never on a team. Well, I was on a team, but because it just didn't feel like a team. Like, so when we had our team meetings, when I had our PLC meetings, it was a place to be like, I can let my hair down. I can talk about the successes. I can talk about the crazy stuff that's happening. We can laugh. We can joke. But again, let's get to where our kids are learning. It transformed my expectation, and it transformed my energy, because you are putting out a lot, right? You step into a classroom and you're managing bodies, you're managing people, you're managing, it's a lot of energy, right? And so if you don't have things pouring back into you, and those things can be people, for me, it was people. For me, it was that environment that I went into, it began to like change what my expectations was.
Got you. So what would you say to that new teacher who's in a position where they are not sure if it's the school or if it's education as a whole?
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of, more than half or about half of new teachers don't make it past year 5.
Yeah.
Some of them think it's the profession. I gotta go. This isn't for me. Or like that imposter syndrome sets in and like, I'm not that great. But maybe to your point, maybe it's their particular school site and the environment and culture. How do you tell somebody, or how do you advise new teachers to make that distinction?
That's a good question. I think you have to build a community to find out like what's happening in other places. And I'm not saying sometimes, cause like you said, being in a high Title I area, the turnover rate for certain different demographics in certain areas is higher because of some of the challenges that are in that area. And so I'm not telling teachers to leave and go where the grass is greener on the other side. You ain't got to worry about discipline. You ain't got to, I'm not saying that. I'm saying many times it's because we don't have anything feeding us, when we're pouring out so much. And so find a way that you are poured back into, and you'll learn like it's this school, or you'll learn like it's the profession. Because when I stepped into an environment where I felt like I was being replenished in a way, I knew, and I belong here, right? I belong in education. I'm a teacher. I was called to do this. Nothing gonna make me leave this, because I'm now in a space where I can get some nourishment. And so I would tell new teachers, find the place that's gonna nourish you.
I like that.
And sometimes it might not be in your school. It might be you connecting with somebody at another school. It might be a Facebook group. It might be a podcast. It might be something that pours right back into you to let you know that, okay, I'm full of inspiration. I'm full of strategies. I'm full of these things. Now, when I go implement them, okay, I realize, I'm good at this. Or I realize like, this ain't for me.
Honestly. And that's actually why I started the impact community.
Gotcha.
Because the whole purpose of that is to, like you said, you may not always find those supports within your building.
Right.
But in the community, I guarantee you, there's teachers that have a similar mindset.
Right.
A similar thought process. They just want to help positively impact student achievement data. Like that's what we always talk about. So getting yourself in a community like that would be super helpful, to help in those times. And I always like to add that I always say not all pain is meant to be endured, because sometimes people say, I'll say things like, you got to stick through, encourage yourself. But in reality, not all pain is meant to be endured. Sometimes you are in a class where it's, in a school where it's not the correct fit. Right. So actually the way that phrase came from, not all pain is meant to be endured, I was given an analogy one day to the staff, and the custodian was talking to us, and she was saying that she goes to the gym even though her knee hurts, and then she was like, just because it bothers me doesn't mean I'm gonna let it beat me. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I went and told that to the staff, and then somebody responded, and they were saying, well, sometimes if you have knee pain, you need to get that checked out. like sometimes you need to stay off it. Like give it some rest. You don't need to keep squatting.
Exactly.
You might, your ACL might be affected. So that's, I was like, yo, actually, she's right. Like sometimes there are some pains that not all pain is meant to be endured. Sometimes you do need to try a different environment. So the question I always tell people to ask themselves are the things that are frustrating me out of my control to fix? Mm-hmm. If they're out of your control, like that means like it's a systemic thing or an education thing. For example, students, like we were talking about classroom management, students are misbehaving. Okay, like is that because you have poor management, or is because the students are not performing well, or students are not behaving?
Yeah.
That's something that you have to ask yourself. Now, if you say something like, like I don't like the hours. Like I'd rather work overnight. Well, this might not be the professor for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, we got to work 5 times a week, every day. So if it's something that is out of your control, that's out of your control.
Yeah.
You get, no matter how good you get at your profession, we got to be there 8 to 3, or whatever the hours are. So that's when you start to differentiate between, okay, is this a school thing, or is this this is education as a whole thing? And if it's education as a whole thing, then I have no problem if somebody was like, I'm going to make my impact somehow, some other way.
Yeah. And that's amazing advice. That locus of control, it's super, super important, because you'll find yourself you become a fixer as a teacher. You learn to put out fires all day, whether that be, something within with a child, or whether that be like, oh my gosh, I forgot to grade this, or you're becoming probably one of the greatest multitaskers that could ever be. And there are times where it's just like, that's out of my control. And the pandemic, man, that taught me, I learned that I've done all that I can do. And that's when something switched on me, because I used to be like, one time my principal told me, and she was just like, and I didn't like it, but it was the truth. She's like, you can't save everybody, but
that's real.
And I was like, but I think I can save this. I think you put this one in my class. But the pandemic taught me that, James, you did everything. And there's nothing else that you can do. And it was good that you done it. Let it go.
Yeah. And I think just having that wherewithal, it's not easy as a new teacher. It's just be like, I did the best I can.
You don't know yet. You don't know yet, because you're still learning, you know what I'm saying? So you don't know that that's why it's good to have coaching. That's why it's good to have a mentor, because I remember even getting my not my substitute teacher, but my, oh wow, I'm lost for words. The student teacher. Jeez, I was like, I got substitute in my head, but I want to say. So I remember getting my student teacher, and she was teaching a lesson on parallel lines cut by a transversal.
Okay.
And the kids were not getting it, and her default right, is to blame the kids. Like, I've done this, I've done that,
Of course.
And I remember sitting her down and having a conversation with her, and I said, have you considered what they don't know, that the reason why they can't make the connection? And she went back to the classroom, because I was teaching her, I showed her a method that I showed her, like, all the acute angles are equal, right? All the obtuse angles are equal. People that's not like, I don't know what you're talking about, because it's math. But anyway, I just showed her that, right? But the kids did not know, or I didn't say no, the kids could not remember what an acute angle was. After she went in and diagnosed the problem, the kids got the lesson. But she literally was about to say, I've done everything. But from a seasoned point of view, and this is something I would love, I love to tell new teachers, like, find somebody who's been doing it that can give you a different perspective, because you'll think that you've done all, and you have. And that's your lens, because that's how much you know right now. But to someone that's been teaching it and seasoned for a while and seen kids get it over and year after year. I looked at her, I was like, girl, I taught this every year. I know these kids can learn this.
Exactly.
Right? And so let me give you a way for you to approach it. Not going to tell you what they're missing, what's missing out, but I'm going to give you a way to support for you to discover on your own. Because I want to shift your mindset that you don't blame kids, that sometimes it's just the way I taught it, right? Or the lack of me knowing how to fill in the gaps with their misunderstanding.
Gosh, that's powerful. And something else you unearthed is the power of using data to drive your instruction.
Yeah.
Before we get to the next point, I just have to let you know that my book, 99% Human, 1% Amazing, right now is free. All you have to do is cover the cost of shipping and I'll get it directly to you. So check the link in the description below. If you're receiving value from this video, you'll probably love the book. All right, so one of the ways that you helped your student teacher was to help her really unpack the data in order to drive instruction. And I feel like that's one of the underrated tools of instruction.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people feel like I just have to teach this information. I see the standards, I know what students have to achieve, so let me go ahead and give them the information. But I don't know, especially as new teachers, how often they're really using the data that the students are giving them to really drive tomorrow's lesson, you know?
Right. And I think, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Okay, no, like in that example with my student teacher, it was, and I think sometimes misinterpreting the data, right? So the data that they're receiving at the moment is that they don't understand, right? And that's true, right? They're not getting the lesson. But the real interpretation is looking at to asking why, right? Because what you're teaching, I honestly come from the standpoint that what if I understand it and it makes sense, I believe anybody can get it, right? And so that's my mindset. Like if I can make sense of it, then why can't they see this, right? It's not like it's super hard. The reason the gap is the sense making. They can't make sense of it. And so many times we're looking at, they got that wrong, man, they don't understand it. No, there is something in between that they haven't made sense of it. In this case, we're talking about parallel lines cut by a transversal. I mean, this makes sense that only these angles are equal to each other because they look alike, right? If you even start on the basis, like, let's just look at it. Just take the math out. Which angles kind of look alike? So you're telling me that a 13-year-old cannot look at these lines and see which ones, when they're cut by this other line, are paired up with the other ones? Nah, I'm not going to believe that, right? And so now you're looking at, okay, there is a misunderstanding that's happening, or there is a connection that's not taking place. And so what is that connection? Kids are having trouble recognizing which angles are acute and which angles are obtuse. When you learn that, that's the data point that you need now to drive the instruction, because now let's step out of what we're doing today, right? Because this acute and obtuse angles is something you learned from previous years, right? So that's the coherence that you're looking at as far as where kids are coming from. But if you don't know where they're coming from, and if you don't remember, like they may need a refresher on that, you will think that they just don't get it or they don't understand it.
And I think even that thought process is a little more advanced than you think. Because even as I'm going into classrooms now with some new teachers, the checking for understanding and the assessing, the evaluation isn't even happening. So even where you are, you might be at step 2. I'm thinking even at step 1, because at step 2 they're saying I'm doing checks for understanding, or I'm checking for understanding, and I'm not understanding why they're not understanding.
Right.
There are some that are not even checking. It's like, because I taught it, they learned it. Because I spoke it, they received it.
Daryl.
And I think, so like I said, I would like to talk principles. So I just want somebody to understand the principle behind why it is so important to really evaluate where students are and what students need. And whenever I try to think principle, I'm always thinking about the best teacher who I ever knew, which was Jesus, right? So when I think about principles, I was like, okay, how can I explain this in a way where people understand the principle, not strategies? The difference between principles and strategies, but the proven principle of why we need to have data-driven instruction. I think about when Jesus was performing miracles, and anytime Jesus performed a miracle, there was 2 simple things he needed to know. He needed to know what needs to happen and what I'm working with. When we're talking about the feeding the 5,000, what needs to happen?
Right.
Over 5,000 people need to eat.
Right.
What am I working with? 2 fish?
Right.
5 loaves of bread. But I can take what I'm working with and I can help transform it to what we need to happen. The same thing I think about like with the woman with the issue of blood, who she pulled on the hem of Jesus' garment, and he first turned and asked, who touched me?
Yeah.
Why? Because he needed to know who touched him. They said there was a lot of people around, there was a multitude of people. It could have been anybody.
Yeah.
He needs to know who touched him so he can figure out what needs to happen and what am I working with.
Yeah.
So even before Jesus performed any miracles, he had to understand those 2 things. And I feel like we, as educators, here's the principle. We need to understand where we're going and what we're working with.
Yeah.
The same exact way that Jesus did it. When he turned around and when the woman touched him with the issue of blood, that could have been anybody, right? Could have been anybody that touched him. And sure, if he would have touched this person, he would have healed them, or he would have solved their issue, which would have been great for that person.
Right.
But then the person that came to him for healing would still have been lost.
Yes, exactly.
And how many students do we have coming into our classrooms that are coming to us looking for answers, looking for solutions, and we're just giving information, just hoping that they get it.
Yeah.
But that person that came to us for that transformation didn't receive it.
Right.
And now they're leaving our class with the same questions they had.
Yeah.
And that's where learning helplessness comes from.
Yeah.
So now they're saying, now they're not thinking it's you. Like the teacher didn't teach this the right way. They start internalizing that thing. They're like, man, the teacher was up there teaching for 90 minutes. 3 hours maybe. The teacher was up there teaching.
Exactly.
If I'm not getting it, it's because I'm not good at math.
Yep.
It's because I'm not good at science. I'm not good at. So now we start to internalize I'm the issue, when in fact the issue might be that the teacher was given information that was not relevant to the student because it's not meeting them where they are and what they need.
Yeah.
And the teacher had no idea because he didn't assess.
Yeah, exactly.
He had no evaluation.
Exactly.
That's why. So that's why it's so important, man. To just like, I mean, I'm talking to them really.
Yeah, most definitely.
I'm talking to the teacher. That's why it's so important to make sure that we are even assessing regularly, consistently throughout the class to see what do students know, what do students need, and adjusting based off of that data and that feedback.
Because if you don't do it based off of that data and that feedback, what are you doing based off of what?
I know what they're doing based off of feelings.
Exactly.
I had a conversation with a teacher last week. It wasn't this classroom, but a teacher last week. And I'll be transparent and say, this is one of the things I realized about myself as an administrator that was a shortcoming. And it's one of the things that as I'm reflecting on myself, like this is one of the things I need to work on moving into next year. This particular teacher was teaching math, and when I would go to the classroom, it passed the eye test. So students were not a behavior issue. They're seated, they're working, compliant. If you look at their notes, they have notebook checks. If you look at their notes, their notebooks, their workbooks, full. The color coding, annotating, fire. So every time I peek in or I stop in for 2 or 3 minutes, we're good. When we're looking at data, especially as we're getting ready towards like end of grade testing, I'm looking at data and the data is not good. So I keep going in and looking, and I'm like, what is the issue? And the reason why I said this is a shortfall as an administrator is because I keep letting the teacher pass the eye test, but I didn't dive deep enough to the data either to say like, are students actually getting it? So then I asked the teacher that question, how do you know students are actually getting it? And he said, I taught it. He said, I taught it. Like, how many students understand it? About 50%. You just make that number. Literally, he said about 50%. You literally just made that number up. Like, what does the data say? Do you have anything that proves that? And I think that's what I'm saying. A lot of people are just, I'm here to teach. I'm a teacher. It's their job to receive it.
But it's their job to learn it. That is their job, and it is our job to teach it so they are able to learn it. And data in that moment, it can be, and I think sometimes people try to make this overcomplicated, right? So data can be in the moment where you're looking around and you can just see like those kids are not with you. Like and this is the thing that that gets me, and I've been guilty of it so many days. You'll teach something and you'll be like, any questions? Do you know how courageous it is? Now let's just talk about adults, right?
Yeah.
For you to be in a room of adults, peers on your own level, to raise your hand and just be like, can you repeat that? I didn't understand that. That doesn't happen with us. Now, for a child sitting in a classroom amongst their peers, do you know how much courage it is for them to, unless it, because every now and again you get those ones, the anomalies that they'll be like, I don't get it every time, hand going up every time. But those are those outliers, if you will. But for a child to raise their hand and be like, can you say that again? I didn't catch it the first time. First of all, it's the look of like, if I'm the only one saying that, that means I'm dumb. Yeah. Because everybody else got it. So I have to actually get over the fact that it's not about my peers at their age where peer pressure is everything. Like, they have to get over that. And then I have to have enough self-awareness and confidence to be like, this is about my education. I'm not going to sit here and for a 13-year-old, for a 12, for a 5-year-old, for a 16-year-old, that's hard to do. And so you not actually having ways where you can assess like whether they got it or not. I stood up here and said it, but do they get it? Yeah. And because the goal of you being the teacher is that they are the learners, and if they're not learning, what's the purpose of us teaching? You know?
Right. So what are some strategies that you use then? Because you got me. I'm like, that actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And a lot of people think that is a strategy. Yeah. Before I release class, ask the question, do you understand?
Do you understand? Oh my gosh.
What's more effective?
Oh my gosh. First of all, that's not. So stop, y'all. We have to stop. We have to stop. I do PD, and I'm gonna go in there. I do professional development with teachers, and I'll stop and ask them, do y'all have any questions? And they'll stare and they'll look. I was like, I know y'all do, but this is what y'all do in y'all class. And then y'all will sit right here. You know you don't understand what I just said, but you don't even want to raise your hand and say it. Why do we think a teenager is able to do the same thing? So effective strategies. This is one of my nerves, as you can see.
I feel it. If you need to stay there, you can stay there.
Oh my God, it gets like, y'all, no. So effective strategies in the moment. You want to know whether your kids got it, right? You want to know if they have it, what the gaps are. So a couple of things that I've done, and let's start at the base level. Whiteboards can be an easy way to assess who has what in that moment, right? And it's in the moment where you're formative assessing, like, okay, who gets it, who has a question, and you give space, you create an environment where if you don't know, put a question mark. Like, it's fine. Like, I think that I grew up in a space and I came in and I try, and you mimic what you see. Yeah. In mathematics, it's always about being right. It was never about the process. We say it now. We say it's a process of learning. It's learning from your mistakes. No, I was in the classroom. It was about being right. And the reason why I fell in love with math because I always liked being right. So first year teacher is about being right. It's not about learning from your mistakes. And so I learned along the way. No, we learn. I mean, the science behind us learning from our mistakes and learning from our failures in that moment that's when we learn the best. But in those moments, you want to see what your kids know, right? Okay. And so physically, it can be a whiteboard. Physically, it can be, not physically, it can be a question, a formative assessment, like in CMS where I work, we had Canvas. It can be a quick, digital question that you ask them according to what you just taught. Because if you ask kids, did y'all get it? And they was like, y'all ain't got no questions? All right, so here's a question for y'all. Go answer this. All of a sudden, you're going to feel a shift in the room because it's just like, oh, I got to prove that I know it. And that's the data that you want because you want to lead your instruction based off of that. And it doesn't have to be a 20-question thing, right?
It doesn't. I think that's what a lot of people get afraid of. Yeah. Because it's like, I have to do a quiz.
No, it doesn't have to be a quiz. It can be a turn and talk to your neighbor, right? If it's a think, pair, share, and you're circulating around the room and you realize like you can't turn and talk to somebody that you don't know anything about, like they didn't get it, so they can't articulate it, and so in that moment you're gathering data like, oh, they don't get it. Like I heard 3 people say the right thing as I was circulating around. You don't turn and talk and you stand in the front of the class and you just like don't listen in on what they're saying. Right. You're getting data in the moment, and what that does, it allows you to change or shift in what you're about to. You now know I can't move on.
Exactly.
I need to clear up this misconception. For the learning to take place, you know?
And you can even see that, like you said, you have to move around the classroom when you get in there, when you're asking the think, pair, share, turn and talks. But if you have a strong enough culture, which you should build a strong culture, where you say you're only allowed to, communicate about the question I just asked, or the prompt that's on the board. When we have students that are talking off task, sometimes that also is an indicator that I didn't know he was doing. So if I just turn to them like, yeah, so so we about to eat for lunch. Like that to me says I don't know what was happening, so I'm just gonna talk about something else. So even that is the
deflections.
It's a data point.
Yeah.
Right, but like you said, you can't just stand at the front of the classroom, turn and talk. That doesn't mean you get 3 minutes to just woo, But now during those 3 minutes, you are purposefully going around the classroom, and listening in on the conversations, hearing what they're saying, and you're like, oh, that's not really what I meant. I need to go revisit that, or okay, they got it. I can move on to the next thing.
Yeah. Exit tickets are good as well. Like using that data when they walk out, and sometimes we give them an exit ticket for what they learned that day. But sometimes when you know that a new unit is coming, you need to give them a ticket to be like, what did they remember from last year? So it can prep you in the lesson that you're doing. Like, I don't believe in these long diagnostics. Like, we give kids and we want to test them on all the stuff that they're going to learn in 8th grade or whatever like that. And you're going to use that data for what? Like, it's not just in time.
For nothing.
Right, exactly.
It's just a money play, honestly.
It is. Like, it's not going to help you because kids are able to learn. Like, I know in the culture now where we're trying to tell people, like, kids will label themselves and we will label kids, and just because you're not performing at the level that you want to be performing right now doesn't mean that you can never get there. Right. And so you want your kids, you want to believe that they can get there. So using those exit tickets, using those, like, we've got Kahoot, we got quizzes, we got
Book it. They've been changing the game recently.
It's data, right? Like, it's fun. Their kids are engaging, but in that moment, you can see, you stop in the moment and just be like, it's like the best data that you can get. You see how many people miss what, and you can make those misconceptions. What made y'all think that? And they can even journal that. They can find journals, or they can put up or have a discussion as far as what are we missing in that moment, because the key is for learning, right?
Can you stay right there for a second? Because I think that a lot of these new technological advancements, I think people get excited about the engagement piece of it. But I don't know how deep they go into the data side of it.
Right.
So if I'm listening as a new teacher who's like, I use Book It or I use quizzes because it's engaging, how do I then use the data from it? Like, what should I be thinking going into creating these assignments or activities or things like that?
Okay, so a couple of things that I think about is that if you're going to spend a class or part of a class just, hey, we're going to play this game to learn or to re-engage with the content that I'm teaching, like, what I got to do something with that data, because I have in the moment data of how many got it right, how many got it wrong, how long it took them. All these new technology gives you so much data. So I am going to use that to onboard tomorrow's lesson, or I'm going to use that to speak to, especially if it's review for a test or a couple of days, like, I'm going to use that data to speak to the misconceptions, or to even highlight, like, y'all are strong here, let's build here. And so it can be next day, or it can be I have stopped class and be like, ooh, y'all ain't get that one, right? And not just, no, we're playing a game, but the game is not to be like, ooh, let's have some fun and let's give out some candy or whatever like that, which I'm going to give to people that do well, but it's for data to instruct me on how I can better close the misconception gap that my kids have in that moment. So it can be right there in the moment, it can be next day, or it can be planning for a lesson that's upcoming, but we have too many ways to get data now for us to be like, well, we did it.
Yeah, and I think I say this a lot when I talk to students about cheating, but I feel like it's applicable in this situation too. Knowledge matters more than numbers. And I think we get so caught up in the numbers, when they finish the Kahoot or the quiz or whatever, this is gonna be a grade.
Right.
You got 7 out of 10 questions right, you got a 70%.
Yeah.
But the knowledge, understanding the ones that they got wrong and why they got it wrong. Obviously, just like what you're saying, I don't need to reiterate it. You did an awesome job talking about it. But one of the things that it made me think about was when we're now using these data points. Yep, I lost it. I was trying to talk my way back into it, but I lost it. But I was gonna ask, how often we should be using these throughout the lesson. Throughout the lesson, how often should we be using things like this to check for student understanding?
Yeah, I don't know a day when you're teaching content where you should not have data points that speak to whether kids are understanding or not. It does not again, it doesn't have to be a 10-question quiz. It doesn't have to be the exit
right.
ticket. It can be like that turn and talk. It can be like hold up your whiteboards. It can be something that in that moment, it can be simple like, how do you feel about what I just said? Give me a thumbs up if you understand. And sometimes those things can be like, because you don't know where kids are at. But if you say everybody, if like you talk about culture, what is the culture that you built in your classroom? Where I was in a classroom where a teacher, and I said, oh, I'm gonna share this every time I think about it, but a teacher was awarding kids when they had a misconception and they were able to articulate it. Like they had these tickets that they would get, like, who got it wrong? Oh, I got it wrong. I was like, whoa, hold up. Hold up, what y'all excited about getting it wrong? And it was like, I got it wrong because I thought I had to do this. It was elementary school at the time. But I thought I had to do this, but now I see according to this answer, I missed this step. And when I was like, come on here, that's culture.
Yeah.
Like that's culture, and that's again a data point. But I'm praised. That's the process, right? Because you want kids to get the right answer in the end. But are they learning from their mistakes? And so that cultural moment, like that data point, to seeing how many kids raise their hand and be like, I want to articulate my misconception, is amazing. And it didn't take that long. It didn't take me going online and building something out or whatever like that. It's the culture that I built.
Absolutely, I love that. One of the cultural phrases that I used, one of the phrases I was able to use because I built a strong culture was, you remember how you were saying it's hard to get students to talk about?
Yeah.
I would say when I finish like the lesson portion before I go into practice, I will say, I need a question, either a question you have or a question somebody else might have, and just stop. Like, so I'm not moving on to the next thing until I get a question. So to your point, a lot of students are not, if I just say, did everybody get it? A lot of students are not going to respond. But if I say, I need a question, like one of y'all's going to give me a question. I need a question. Either one you have it or one that somebody else might have. A lot of times, I would say 98% of the time.
I love that, though. I love that.
Bro, 98% of the time somebody says, somebody else might be wondering.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But it takes the pressure off of them. Like, somebody might be wondering how, And then when I hear that, I'm like, cool. Somebody might be having that question. Let me go ahead and address it before we break up into small groups or something like that. So, like you said, you have to have culture for that.
Most definitely.
By the end of the year, by after a couple of tries, they just know. Before we get into practice, somebody has to ask a question. So now during the lesson, they're thinking about what question am I going to ask.
Right.
You got to ask them.
Yeah. You said something. I watched one of your clips about cold calling and that creating. And again, that comes from a culture. And so my kids knew that Mr. Oneal talks to everybody in this classroom. And so, like, if I'm going around the room and I'm cold calling, like, you don't get it, you don't get it, you don't get it, you don't get it, you don't get it. Well, there's something that is a misconception because you can't answer the question. But again, like, that speaks to the culture that I created. So they know I will stop the classroom and be like, who haven't I talked to today? And so my kids, when I ask them for a survey, I always give classroom surveys as far as, my environment or whether they feel like I treat kids fairly. I go through a whole this whole PD that I talk about with classroom culture.
I love it,
But I would ask, like, what are the things that stood out in the classroom? And a lot of them says that you don't call the same person every time. They've been in classroom where the teacher talks to the person that's always raising their hand, and so you will literally stop and say, who haven't I talked to today? And make sure you talk to everybody. And in that moment, I'm gathering data. That cold calling is gathering data. Like, okay, if I'm on the sixth person, that lets me know that there's misconceptions that need to be made. And so let's stop and let that breathe, and now let's actually address it.
Yeah, it's all data. It's all with cold calling. It's funny because before you were talking about teachers and like blaming the students.
Yeah,
I feel like sometimes we blame the students when we don't get it, and we accept the credit, or we take the credit when they do get it. When it might not have been you. So like we'll call on the student. We'll do cold calling. Which cold calling, if you don't know, is randomly calling on students and asking them a question to answer out loud. So we'll cold call on the student, and they don't got it. If they don't get it, sometimes we'll think to ourselves, "Oh man, that's a low student." Right. But if we call on one of the students that always gets the answer right, and they get it right, they're like, "Oh, I taught that thing."
I did that.
They might have known that before they got to you. Like right. So I just thought that was funny. The thing I was going to say earlier, which I remember now, is also...
Come on, back to remember.
It's in there. But like when we're using those online tools, playing to their strengths, which is using the tools or understanding what platforms, what tools to use in order to get accurate data.
Yeah.
because data is important. And I just want you guys to make sure that you are starting to, or if you haven't already, like, focus on getting more data points. But accurate data is super helpful. A lot of times I noticed, I used Kahoot a lot. Granted, last time I taught was 2018. So I used
you old. Gosh, you ain't taught in years. Look at you. Gosh.
I get that. I need that. But, so they're probably new ones, but I'll just use Kahoot. What I noticed about Kahoot when I was using it is that students always wanted to be first.
Yep.
They didn't necessarily want to be right.
Nope.
They just wanted to be first.
Yes.
So when I was a math teacher again, when I was given math questions that were like multi-step equations, they would look at it and be like, Fred, you know, knowing they didn't solve it.
Yeah.
So rather than me just continuing to beat a dead horse, like, no, take your time, write it out. I was like, okay, I'm only going to use Kahoot when I want it to be something that they can answer right away.
Yeah.
Like vocabulary. You know what I'm saying? Because I know they want to be first.
Right.
So I put it on the board. Which one's the coefficient? 4. Like, I want them to be able to get those.
Yeah.
I don't do multi-step, long-step stuff in Kahoot.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Play to their strengths. Understand which platforms or which tools to use for the intended outcome.
That's good, because I stopped using Kahoot for that very reason and went to quizzes, because you can turn off the time, right?
Yeah.
Like the extra points for getting time, and so that's a boss move, right? That's really good. You said something that I lost my train of thought there, that I was gonna comment on, and I can't think about what it was. But yeah, that's really good. That's really good.
Yeah. So that's it, man. So that was one of the things I used. But similar to your point, using Kahoot for that, quizzes for this, Blooket for that. So I'm just using different platforms for different reasons intentionally in order to get the most.
I know what it was now. And so sometimes using data to hurt or to judge kids. So looking at where they were last year. Like, it's good. Well, we have the beginning of the year meetings where we talk about kids, and we talk about, this is what we did at school. We talked about the kids, and we talked about where they come from and some of the issues that they may have, went over that 504, IEP, all of the plans and all the different things like that. And then we looked at their EOG scores with their state test achievement. And sometimes you can look and be like, oh, this is a low class, right? Oh, yeah. And using that to judge. And I've always been the type of person where I'm like, I don't care where they are, I know they're gonna grow with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so don't let the data get you into the mindset of what a student is capable of. Right? That's where they're at in this particular moment for this particular test, and does not mean that they cannot grow out of this proficiency level. Because I've seen kids grow amazingly past those things. Why? Because they have a teacher that not only cares, but a teacher that actually cares that they learn and is able to use the data in those moments, that have become masterful in this moment to allow the data to speak to the misconceptions, because I know the kids can get it, right? And that's the principle of using the data, is to speak to what they need to get, right? And that's why we use it. We don't just base upon how we feel in the moment or what we feel like they get, or even wait until the end to get a test and realize, y'all ain't get this the whole time. What was y'all doing the whole time I was teaching? Not learning? But you would have known that if you had put in those formative assessments, those data points along the way to speak to how they are getting it, what they are getting, and so it'll speak to the way you teach it.
Yeah, absolutely. So with regard to data and instruction and using all that information, what is your advice for that first year teacher or a new teacher? So what is your advice for a new teacher stepping into this to understand how to use data to inform instruction?
Yeah, my advice, I know it's a lot. Let me just go ahead and say that right now, because sometimes it's learning the content, it's learning the culture of the school, it's actually learning the new curriculum, it's doing the math or whatever the content is. So it can definitely be a lot on a first year or a new teacher stepping into a role and just be like, hey, you just gave me something else that I need to do. I need to deal with data. But it is that you use it to drive your instruction. So my advice is to find ways to see what kids know and don't assume. So like, we've given out so many ways that you can do that. Like, it can just be a turn and talk. It can be the whiteboard situation. It can be a quick question in your learning platform that you can get data right then and there. It can be the Blooket. It can be the Kahoot. It can be the quizzes. It can be, there's so many things. For us in math, it was the Delta Math. Like, do these last little 3 exit tickets in Delta Math. That's going to really let me know whether you get it or not. And so my advice is to just don't get on this I was going to say roller coaster, but it's more of this coasting drive or this cruise control where I'm just like, I taught it. Like, get into the habit of saying, what can I see that they understand in the moment? Sometimes, definitely in the moment, but also when they leave, to allow that to speak to how I instruct for the next day. Yes, being great or good at anything requires work, right? This is work, but this is the work that needs to happen to ensure that you're not up there working and your kids ain't learning.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say to teachers.
I love that, man. I love that. That was a whole masterclass on
Listen.
A whole one, man. I appreciate you, James.
Yes, sir.
Was there anything else that you want to say? I know I always want to give you that space. I'm just going to stop talking. Give you that space if you wanted to say anything else before we disconnect.
No, I love this profession. I love what we do as educators. We're some of the most amazing people on the face of the earth. And anybody that is deciding to get into education and deciding to take that leap and to get into this profession, I applaud you. I commend you. I stepped out of the classroom to support people that want to do this job.
You're doing an awesome job
well.
You're doing an awesome job, man.
Right. And so that's why I do what I do. But I want to encourage you to stick it out. Not just to stick it out, not that because you forgot that your knee is hurting and you ain't checked out your knee. But I encourage you to find people that love it and are great at it and can show you how to be great at it. Because once you get good at something, it's addictive, right? Like, seeing kids grow, seeing kids learn, there's no feeling like that. And the opposite of that is the reason why people leave. Because no one wants to be in a profession or asked to do a job that you really feel like you're not capable of doing and feel like you can't do. So if you're doing it, I encourage you to find the tools, the people, the resources to help you do it well. And he's a guy that you can definitely follow, like, subscribe, do whatever you need to do. Get on his whatever he's offering right now so that you can do it well.
I appreciate that, man, honestly, because that ultimately the goal is to help as many students as possible. Man. So just all of the tips and strategies that you gave would be super helpful. And then how do people find you?
So www. I just put how old I am. MrJamesOneal.com is my website. www. Like, who says that anymore? Or they can find me at Mr. James Oneal on all social media platforms. Either it's MR period or the period is not there. But you can find me on all social media platforms. Mastery for All is what I'm all about.
Mastery for All. And then if you felt like this conversation was engaging, imagine when you get to one of his live PDs. That's a lot of fun, right?
I try to bring it.
Mastery for All. The whole goal is honestly to help as many students as possible be able to have foundational skills so that they live the life that they choose, not the life they're forced to settle for. We want to help as many students as possible create choices. That's why I got the hoodie on. I had to put that in there.
Yes, sir.
People wondering why you got choices on your hoodie, but we want students to grow up and have choices. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, man.
I know they appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Let's connect on the next one so we can have, although we are new teachers, we can make a big impact. I'll see you next time.
If this school year burnt you out and you're coming back next school year, summer break isn't going to be enough to make next school year even better. Because time off doesn't heal you when the issue is how you spend your time on. What will heal you is a solution to your stressors. As a former terrible teacher turned two-time teacher of the year, I've struggled with the same things that you are struggling with. Tell me if you said any of these things this year. This is too much. What is wrong with these kids? Where's my support? You don't need any more strategies that may or may not work. What you need is a comprehensive solution, one that is unique to you and your problem. And if you watch this far, you definitely connect with the problem. So let me share the solution that helped heal me. I was able to find my teacher ID to help me avoid stress and make an impact. And now, I just want to help you do the same. I can teach you how to identify your dreams so that you can live it in every block every day. I can teach you how to illuminate your differences so that you can make the impact that only you can. I can teach you how to ignore your doubters so you can fortify your mindset to know that you are strong enough to do this work. And I can teach you how to improve your data so you can deliver on the promise you made to students to help them be their best self. All you have to do is click the link below to make next school year your best school year.